live. Candace, our last Facebook Live, so what can you tell us about Florence and where it is right now and what's it forecast is?
Yeah, they still got the big problem of 2 miles an hour, so we get a movement of 2 miles an hour. The issue we have is still going to be that rainfall, still not leaving anytime soon. We've been talking about these rain bands and how really these areas, like, you know, you're looking at Jacksonville, Surf City, that have repetitively have had this rain. And notice, even with time, you start to see some new rain bands form. These rain bands move at the same speed as the actual system itself. So I'm not talking about storm motion, because obviously those go pretty fast, but contained in the same area for a long period of time. And that's particularly dangerous because they've already seen, we're looking at the radar and some of the rain gauges, 20 to 30 inches of rain, some reports of over 30 inches of rain. And guess what? We got a long way to go. So unfortunately, not going away anytime soon.
And can we look at Western North Carolina and upstate South Carolina? What's going on right now? And
yeah, the problem is, you know, this is additional rain, by the way. So this is even including what's already fallen. So this is what's yet to come. And there's an indication here of looking at those rain bands, 15 to 20. But look when we start getting into the western part of North Carolina, you start seeing these values, 10 to 15 inches of rain. Sneaking over Charlotte, you know, you got Asheville, Boone, Hickory, all these areas over in the western part of the state. They really, some of these areas could get 6 to 10 inches of rain, but here's the caution going into the rest of the weekend. We still have to look at the movement of the system. If you have a little bit of shift in that actual track, some of these values can move back and forth depending on that shift. So it really is important that you start looking at the terrain, you start looking at this is tropical rain. It comes down fast, it's repetitive. If you add the terrain, the mountains and the hills to it, it could really become a dangerous flash flooding situation.
And I could tell that some of the outer bands are approaching, kind of close to Asheville. Can you show us where?
Yeah, you start looking at this, you start seeing, you know, wow, you've got Hickory right here. Look at this rain. So this right here, for you to be able to see, that's Hickory. And you start seeing some of these rain bands get really close to Hickory. So you can see the slow progression. These are getting there as slow as the storm is. So you can see this is a long-term situation. You're going to start seeing it continuously move that way. So if you haven't got any rain yet, you just really got to think of it as it's still on the way, and it's going to be throughout the rest of the weekend, maybe even early Monday.
Even in upstate South Carolina, because it seems like it's more contained in North Carolina, right?
Yeah, you can see it there too. I'd definitely go back to this. You start seeing, if you're in anywhere, you know, you think about the movement. I mean, yeah, you really can. So let's kind of follow the track. So if you think about this slow track, this is what we can expect for the center with time and eventually moving on out of here. So the whole weekend, we're going to have the system right through here. Usually to the right side of that is where we can get that heavy rain. So if that track happened to shift a little further to the left, what happens is so does that rain. And that's why we need to just make sure everybody realizes it's not necessarily a situation that we think everybody could get it, but the potential is there for some very devastating, very dangerous rainfall rates. So that's what we got to look at. So you follow the center to the right side of it, a lot of rain.
Will wind still be an issue in those most western parts of the state, or is it mostly just the rainfall?
I think you're going to have still a little bit of wind. If you think about it, that, you know, anytime you have so much energy, you still can have some gusty winds around the center. But the issue is these rain bands continue well away and to the right. You can still have some very gusty winds. So if you saturate the soil, we've got to be careful with the trees. I mean, look around your property, look around and see the dangers of the trees. So you got to watch for fallen trees, especially if you get a lot of rain. The soil gets saturated and you start losing those trees quicker.
And we had a mother and her infant child who died when a tree fell on their house, so definitely worth noticing that. My other question was, we were just, when we took a break, we were talking about mountains and how that can increase rainfall. Can you explain why? Yeah,
let's look at that. It's interesting because if you look at the mountains, there's several complications. You know, you think about when the rain falls, of course, we're talking about the rapid motion because of gravity. So the water gets really funneled. It can be some flash flooding. But the other problem is when you have these mountains, a lot of times when you have that flow up the mountain, what happens is the water in the atmosphere is really heavy. So on this side of the mountain, you could get some very heavier rain. So the other issue besides the terrain is the fact that the mountains actually create a situation that you can get enhanced rainfall associated with these heavy clouds of tropical moisture moving upward, and it's too heavy to move, so it just drops a lot of rain. So some of that rainfall could be enhanced, and that's why we have such high totals in here. And that's a lot of rain for places that don't normally get that kind of rain from a single event like this.
And so another conversation we had was about the sort of the social science involved in your work. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, you know, you think about it, we do a great job here at the Hurricane Center with the physical science. I mean, it's just, that's what our degree is in. But another aspect of it is the social science. It's really understanding exactly the perception of the information. So do people have a perception of what 10 to 15 inches of rain could be? The other part of it is comparing storms. We've mentioned that several times and how dangerous it is to compare storms. So you can have a hurricane come through, let's just say it's a Category 2, and your perception of what happened in the Category 2, by the way, is different than somebody else's perception of what happened in the Category 2. Somebody might have got some big impacts, somebody might not have got big impacts. So one person's like, that Category 2 was bad. The other person says, I got through that Category 2. That's what we're talking about, the social science. It's taking all this science, the translation of that to impacts, and then understanding what that means to them. And that's often pretty difficult.
And often I think people pay attention to the category, because I know in my head when someone says, oh, it's a tropical storm, so you feel a little relieved. But I guess the message you're trying to get out is that no, it can still be pretty bad. And we look at Sandy, for example, which was a superstorm, right? And caused so much devastation. So I think it's important to get that out. Just to wrap up, what are the key points that you want to mention before we wrap up about Florence? What are some of the things that jump to mind that seem significant?
I'll tell you, I can't stress it enough with this rainfall forecast, because we've got a ways to go. You might not have seen a drop yet inland, but it's still on the way. And I think the big message is here: be ready for this. It's not just a coastal event. This is slowly but surely coming your way if you're inland. Not really sure exactly who's going to get those rainfall amounts, but the potential is to get some of these amounts. So be ready for that rainfall. Be ready for the flooding. And a lot of times it can happen at night too. So you might not be able to see it. So you have to have a way to get that information, a NOAA radio, have that cell phone. We have the local forecast offices, they're there ready to issue the tornado warnings and the flash flood warnings. Be ready to receive